For those of you who have been following my channel, you know what has been going on over the past 2 weeks and how the Lord sent me down to Miami, Florida. Now, I want to talk about this experience because this experience, I found myself in a position where I needed help and no one would help us. And it put me in a place where I had to completely depend on God because everyone around us was so callous and we were sleeping outside on the ground. Me and my children had no shelter. We had nothing. And I didn't know how we were going to have food. We were running out of food. My mother and them was sending money. They were running out of money. And so God used some people who were obedient to send money through Cash App. And I thank him for that. He said they're going to be blessed. He even had strangers come up to me. There was one stranger who gave me $10 at one point. And it's like, it comes to a place because everywhere we went, it was like no one would help us. And I had never seen anything like this before. I had even went up to one of the hotels. The Lord told me to go up to the hotel. And there was this Hilton hotel down there. And I asked him, I said, I am on the streets. I explained my situation. Me and my kids have been sleeping on the streets. I said, could you at least give us a courtesy room for the night? Can we sleep in the room? And I explained it. And the man just looked at me. He didn't even pretty much blink. It's like he was not even fazed at all about what I was saying to him. And he's like, no, that's the price. This is the cost. And I'm like, I don't have enough. I don't have it. And he was like, so we had to walk away and we went back outside on the streets. And it's like everybody would just drive past us. People were walking past. They didn't even look at us. Or if they did look at us, like they just kept on. They just drive past like it didn't faze them. And so the Lord was just showing me with this experience also, what he showed me through this and what my kids are going through. This is going to come to a point where his people, we're going to be approached with this. As you know, that they're going to be having this implementation where if you do not take a mark, the demonic mark of the beast, they call the mark of the Antichrist, you will not be able to buy or sell. Now, I've made a video about this on my channel called The Mark. I made a short movie about this. And I don't like to really talk about this too much because I don't like to induce fear in anyone. But there's going to come to a place where God's people are not going to be able to buy and sell. Those who would abstain from taking this mark of the Antichrist. And so the Lord was showing me this was being set up for a long time now, because I would go into the store. And not only that, let's just go back. I was living in a place of captivity and bondage for a long time. And I could not get a job. And when I did get a job, it's like I would get attacked relentlessly. And it's like they did not want me on a job because the Lord was letting me know they didn't want me on a job because I didn't belong to the kingdom of darkness. I was a born again Christian. This is not just any old person who goes to church. Because see, he says there, not everybody who says they belong to God are going to be, received into his kingdom. They're not his. They might have a form of godliness, but they're not truly his people. And so those who are filled with the Holy Spirit, those who are walking according to righteousness, they're not, a part of Satan's kingdom. They're not going along with Satan's agenda. They are considered enemies to Satan and his principalities. And so those, as you know, Satan controls, he's the prince of the air. He controls what's going on. If you're not under submission to the Holy Spirit, you're going to be influenced by the demonic principalities and the demonic spirits that are operating over the earth, okay? And so what the Lord was showing me is when I was getting attacked on these jobs, they did not want me to work there. They were coming up against me everywhere I went, making it very difficult for me because they didn't want us to have anything. And he showed me how they do not want his people to have anything. And see, this is the thing. This is God's earth. Yes, this is his earth. Everything in it is his. But God allowed the enemy to take control over everything, because not only that, he wanted to allow people an opportunity to see if they're going to serve him. If they're going to serve him or if they're going to go along with Satan's agenda, because see, God does not force anything on anyone. And as you know, this is not our home. This is just a temporary place where we are residents. It's like if you think of a place, an apartment that you leased out, that's not your permanent home. It's not yours. You're there, even though everything in this earth is God's. He allowed the enemy to have access to control everything on this earth for this short period of time until Christ comes back to get his church. We have a permanent home where he's gonna make everything. He's gonna recreate this entire earth. He's gonna recreate everything. So we have a permanent place where we're gonna go. But so God was trying to let us know that we're not supposed to cast our cares upon earthly things that are of this world, because it's not our home. That's why he says, lay up your treasures, not on earth, but up in heaven, because our treasures should be laid up for the kingdom of heaven, because that's where we'll be. It says, wherever you lay up your treasures, that's where your heart will be. So this is why he's allowed the enemy to pretty much control everything. And then you have these elite organizations who are, they're in submission to Satan. They have vowed and made oaths with Satan. They've given up their lives to Satan so they can have power and control and run everything on this earth and have all the riches, all the money. And Satan has allowed them that power But these people, they feel that everything belongs to them, even though this is God's earth. He's just leasing this out to them. He's leasing it out to them. He allowed them to have it temporarily. He allowed them to take control over it, basically. It's like I said, it's like a property manager who is running and controlling the apartments, even though the apartments do not belong to them. They did not personally buy it. They're the property managers. They're controlling what's going on. They're given authority over it. But we still have authority. Those who are operating in the Holy Spirit still have the complete authority and power. But God just allowed the enemy and his people to be able to take over and be able to control things. They have all the control right now. They're controlling the money. They're controlling the jobs. They're controlling all these things. They're controlling the government. They're controlling the policies, the laws, everything that's happening. Because see, what's going to happen, God is testing his people now. He wants to know who's going to truly stand for him and his kingdom, or who's going to give over to this agenda that Satan has implemented for his people, for those who follow him. And so what he has shown me is that when I cannot get a job, and when people were attacking me, they did not want his people to have anything. They were truly purposely making it very difficult for all of God's people, so they cannot have anything on this earth, because they're trying to cause his people to turn over to Satan's kingdom. They do not want anyone to serve God. So those who chosen to take a stand and not go with Satan's kingdom, meaning to not be a part of all the things that Satan represents, to not go along with all his agendas, all of, all the things that he stands for. And those who chosen not to follow this, Satan has pretty much made them an enemy of his, because these are God's true, his true church. These are his people. And so they do not want us to have anything. And so when I was going to the stores, I couldn't get a job. Every time I have a job, I can only keep for like a few months. God allowed me there just for his purpose, just to pray for his people, to see if they come out of bondage. A lot of people did not want to come out of bondage because they didn't want to lose their job. They put their job first. They put money, material things. They want their cars. They want their houses. They want their businesses. They want this nice, lavish life. They want to be able to wear the finest material, get their hair done, get their nails done, drive these expensive cars, take vacations, lounge on an island, you ride first class, and all this frivolous stuff. They wanted the finer things of life. They wanted to be able to take care of their families. And so they have chosen to hold on to these things and to continue to do the things according to Satan and go against his authority and his laws, and fight against his people, because they want to have these things that Satan has allotted them and has shown them that this is what they need. Even though this stuff is temporal. Temporal means it's not going to last. It's temporary. It's something that is only here for a certain moment. It's a brief period before you know everything's going to pass away. And so when I could not get a job, I was forced to live on welfare for a long time. I'm like, Lord, why you let me live like this? And the Lord was grooming me. He was preparing me ahead of time. As you know, if you think about the Israelites, when they were brought out of bondage, God had them walking in the wilderness. He took care of them. They didn't have everything they needed, but he was taking care of them even though they were in the wilderness. And so that's what God was showing me. Like, a lot of his people have not been allowed to have jobs. We have not been allowed to have money. We have not been allowed to have businesses. The enemy has blocked up everything. The enemy has stolen things from God's people and given it to all his people as a means to apply pressure to God's true anointed and God's true followers and his church, so that they can go over to his kingdom. And God has allowed this, because see, God could have shut it down at any time. He is more powerful than Satan. Satan is only operating out of the power that God has allowed him to operate out. This is God's power. Everything belongs to him. Remember that. So Satan is not doing anything that God did not allow, because God could have shut it down at any time. God is allowing this as a process, basically, because he wants to see if his people will truly follow him. Yes, God is giving to some of his people. He's allowed some of his people to live in dire poverty. He's allowed some of his people to not have anything, okay? But if God wants you to have something for his purpose, he's going to give it to you. That's something that Satan cannot take away. God's going to give things to us for his purpose. If he wants you to have money to build up something for his purpose, he will give it to you. Satan cannot hold that away. He cannot keep that. If God puts a promise in your heart and he tells you to do something, yes, you can do it. But when it's going to come to a point in these very last days, here, these latter days, Satan's people, he's keeping God's children from having anything. And so, as I said, I would get welfare. And they were giving me certain cards. For a while, I was getting this card for my money. My benefits were put on this card once a month. And I would go into the store. I was going to stores like, all these search sources. And usually when I go to Walmart, it started really happening. I would notice at Walmart. And I would go into the store and I would try to buy things for my card. And when I set the card, even though I have money on there, and when I set my card. And so a lot of these places, a lot of these companies, they'll implement things and, according to Satan's agenda. And so, as you know, Walmart recently, a lot of them have gone to not accepting any type of cash whatsoever. They're only taking cards. If you go in any of their self-checkout stores, they were like one of the first stores to implement no cash only. And this is being in line with this digitized system. As you've heard of the blockchain and you heard of all this stuff that's coming out, this is coming forth to the digitized system. So when I would go into Walmart, I had the card and they would not take my card. And the Lord's let me know that they were doing this to certain people. They did not want certain people shopping at their stores. And so, okay, so I would just pray and decree judgment. I'd walk away and say, okay. And sometimes I wouldn't leave. One time I did leave and I said, you know what, I'm not gonna get my money. But one time I needed my things and I said, you know what, I would pray and then finally the card would go through. But I had to do it like several times and it kept on rejecting my card. It kept on rejecting it no matter how I did it. And then the agent, one of the customer service workers would come over and help me and it still wouldn't go through. And I would have to pray and then finally would release. And the Lord was letting me know the reason why this was happening is because they did not want me shopping at their store. This was already, because see, the principalities are over these stores. A lot of these stores, when these companies are under these people who have given oaths and vows to get what they're getting, to get their wealth, to get their riches, to get their success, they're going according to what Satan wants, okay? And so the Lord was already showing me that they did not want me to shop at their stores, and it was going to come to a place where his people were not going to be able to buy or sell. And so he was already letting me, he was basically introducing that to me. As you know, like, have you ever saw like where some people will introduce something, where a company will come out with something and they will introduce it as a form of a rollout or like some type of, like a period where they try to see how it works. I forgot what they call it right now. I'm drawing a blank, but they would pretty much, you know, take it into one area, one location and give it like a trial to see how it works. And it's like an introductory period. I think that's what it's called. It's an introductory period where they'll do like a phase. They'll phase it into one place to see how it goes, see if it's going to be successful. And if it's successful, that's when they'll launch it everywhere. And so what he was showing me, God was introducing me to something like an introductory stage of what's going to be happening. And so this takes back to when I was in Florida, when I could not find a place to stay. No one would help me. People were coming up to me literally. Well, at first, no one would say nothing to me at all. But then there were like certain people come up to me. One lady came up to me, asked me, was okay. And you could tell she wanted to help me. But then she said she'll come back. And it's like she left and she didn't come back. Then this one man, he drove around in his car and saw me and my daughter lying out on the streets. He's like, what's wrong? You need something, you need help. And I told him what was going on. And it's like, all of a sudden he just changed. It's like he was alarmed. Like, you know, he's like, well, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Like, and I'm like, okay. And it didn't make any sense, but he left like he was in a hurry. And it's like the Lord was letting me know that they were not allowed to help me. The enemy was not letting anyone help me. And I kept on asking for help. I would make videos, ask people to give me money. Nobody was giving me money. Then finally the door started where people were sending a little bit of money. And it was like God was showing me only his people were able to help me. He was sending his people to help me what they could. And that's where it's going to be, where God's going to have to literally have his people help each other. And he's going to have to supply for his people. If you remember when they were in the wilderness, when he brought the manna from the heavens, he let the manna drop from the sky and he fed his people that way because, see, their enemies had chased them out. He was bringing them out. They were stuck and forced into the wilderness. They had to run away from their enemies who had put them in bondage and captivity, and they were in the wilderness. And so they had no food or drink there. They could not cook anything. They had nothing there in this wilderness. It was a barren land. And so there was nothing there for his people to eat. And so God had to bring forth manna from heaven for his own people. And so the Lord was letting me know as I was experiencing that in Florida when no one would help me. And the only way I ate was when God would sporadically have his people help me, or he would make a way somehow with only his people. Like the hotel. I tell you about the hotel. I had went in a hotel that one day and I had no deposit, but I walked in there on faith, and he had this one lady because I knew I would have favor with her. And there was another worker there, but God had that worker wait on me, and she gave me favor. She allowed me to go forth. I'm not going to say what hotel it was, but she allowed me to go forth without the deposit. And God used her to give me favor. But then when I went to another hotel, you saw that what happened with that. The woman wouldn't even see. It's like God's kingdom against Satan's kingdom. They're going to be people who are controlled by Satan. They're going to be on an agenda for Satan, those who are of the world. And then there's the kingdom of light. And when it gets to those days, it's like we're going to have to depend on no one but God. And see, God is introducing this to his people already, those who are truly his people, getting them prepared for it. But those who are of the world, who do not cast their cares upon God, they're money hungry, they're going for everything, their money, their fame, they're this, they need this, they can't go without. They're the ones who are going to be taking that mark. Because see, they don't know what it's like to sacrifice. They're so gung-ho for money and material things. They're so gung-ho for the things of this world, their money, their cars, their investments, their property, their land. They're still looking at this. They want to dine out and eat at these fancy restaurants. They're feeding their face and they're going to hotels, 5-star hotels. They're taking vacations everywhere. Yes, this is nice, but those people who have been allowed to live that life, they've been accustomed to living that and they have not had to go without. They're not going to be able to resist taking that mark. Basically, they're not going to be able to go through the tribulation that's going to happen, living days without eating or not being able to shop in stores or having their children being sick and not trusting God and stand on faith for God to heal their sick child. Instead, they're sitting here depending on the doctor to help them, but they can't go into the hospital because, see, they ain't got the mark. And see, the hospital say you can't come in here if you ain't got the mark. But see, God already got the healing power. But see, if you ain't trusting God and you ain't been put in a position where you had to rely on God and Him only, you ain't gonna be able to do it. You're gonna give in. And see, so that's why God allowed, that's another reason why God allowed that to happen when I was in Florida. He allowed my children to experience that with me, because it's going to come a point very soon where God's people are going to be tested. And see, this is another test, because see, those who accept this mark, they're not going into God's kingdom and they're going to be tormented. God's going to torment them on this earth. He's going to unleash plagues to torment all those who take this mark, who want to live in comfort, who want to have the comfort of the world, who wants to have the comfort that the enemy allots and provides them instead of suffering for God's sake. But those that were strong and endured to the end, see, this is what this means, to endure to the end. Once again, you hear this, I talk about this a lot, enduring to the end. Those who are able to endure, who are able to withstand, who are able to put aside some temporary luxuries and comfort and pleasures and sacrifice for God. They're the ones who are going to have eternal glory. They're going to go with God for eternity, for glory. But you know what's going to happen to those who take that mark, who could not give up a little bit of pleasure temporarily and suffer momentarily for God. A lot of His people, like I said, already have been suffering long term. They have been suffering for a long time. And see, these people, as you know, when you go through a little bit of tribulation, you become strong. It's strengthening you. The more tribulation you face, the more strength you have. And see, so a lot of this, the Lord was showing me, He's already preparing His people. He's prepared me. He's preparing a lot of people who are being prepared right now. They're going through this right now. They're in lack right now. They're in bondage right now. They're being persecuted right now. They're being ostracized right now. They're being rejected right now. They're being set aside. They're being lonely right now, only because God is strengthening them for this point where it comes, where He's going to be introducing. He knows what's coming for the church. And He wants them to be prepared. It's like a good father's not going to leave you out here and not prepare you for something. So He's preparing His people right now. But those who can't part with a little bit of temporary things, you need your job because you're scared of how you're going to pay your rent and you're not trusting God to get you through it. You don't want to live without your 6-figure income, and you can't go without having your all your pleasures, your Netflix and your weekly date nights at the movies and all this stuff. Your vacations, you can't go without traveling. You can't go without your first class seats on the plane. And you can't go without all these luxuries. Taking your vacations and living in your mansion and your big old houses, or driving your nice luxury vehicles, your nice cars that you're paying all this money on every month. See, you couldn't live without that. And so that's why when God was trying to get you to let it go, and get you through some stuff, because He knew it was about to come forth. You didn't want to let go of it, so God let you have that stuff. He said, okay, you can have it, because He know right now you didn't get yourself prepared. You didn't walk through the wilderness when God told you to. So now when you get tested with the fire and the flames, you ain't gonna be able to withstand that. You're gonna be the one who's gonna give up and give up and accept the mark of the beast, because you want temporary comfort, which is going to lead to nothing but eternal suffering and pain. So those of you right now, those of you who are going through this, I'm just letting you know to stay strong. We don't know when God is coming back for His church, but we do know that these days are very evil. This has already been prophesied in the Bible, so something that is going to happen. It's not something that we can avoid. It's inevitable. It will happen. It's just when it will happen, but it will happen shortly. So continue to allow God to strengthen you, because see, the good Father is going to strengthen His children so that they can be prepared. So those of us, it's like if you've been used to doing something, your muscles are ready. Like if you've been used to going without eating, or if you've been in the battlefield and you've been used to living in hot climates, it's like when you're presented with something, when you're presented with the actual storm, because you've been preparing for it all along, you're going to be able to go through it a little more easier. It's not going to be as difficult. So when the mark of the beast is implemented, when this comes forth for God's church, those of us who have been suffering already, who've been learning, God been training to live without, who've been having to rely on God and his faith, who've been kept without having anything, who've been used to not having people around us, who've been already ostracized and rejected, we're okay. We're going to be able to deal with it because we've already been used to this. He's already been grooming us. He's already been preparing us. We've been allowing ourselves to be prepared. But those who could not let go, who needed their stuff, you're the ones who's going to be a little more difficult, and most likely you probably will give in unless you get it together right now and ask God to strengthen you and prepare you.